All right. Okay, so just to get started, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Ashley Jackson, and I am the one-to-one coach at North Garland. And just a little background, I moved into this position on March 2nd from being an 8th grade science teacher at Hudson. So it's been a little bit of a crazy transition, but I'm loving it, and I'm so excited to be here and to help do some webinars over some tools. And then Jennifer is in here also. Jennifer, if you want to pop on.
Hey everybody, I'm Jennifer Timmisberry. I am the one-to-one coach at Saxe High School, and I'm going to be in the chat. So if you have questions, if your chat is working, then post your questions in there. All right, awesome. You guys.
Okay, so to get started, I just posted it in the chat also. Like I said, one of my laptops is working with the chat and one isn't, so just going to kind of be back and forth on here. But these are the sign-in links in the slides, so you can get a copy of the slides. They have some helpful videos and some links on here. And then once you get those slides, you get a copy of them. Down at the bottom of this slide, if you click on where it says click here to get a practice data sheet, you can click on this one and it will give you a template to copy so that you can actually go through and practice some of these different tricks that I'm going to be showing you, and just different things like formatting and conditional formatting, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to give you like a minute probably to get signed in and then get a copy of these slides. And like I said, if you want to practice with us so you can kind of see where the tools are and how to use them, you can click to get the practice data sheet. Sorry. And whenever you are ready to go, will you go ahead and put like a thumbs up or one of the little claps or whatever to show me that you're ready to move on? Just want to make sure everyone gets what they need. Awesome. Awesome. All right. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we are just going to go over some kind of basics with sheets. If you are used to using Excel, there are a lot of similarities with it, but there are a couple differences. So we'll just kind of be going over those things, and these are the ones that I'm just going to go over quickly in case you don't know how to do them, just different things you can do. I am going to be using that practice data sheet that I gave you, and this was actually one from my old team when we were in science, but I like changed names and stuff, so it doesn't actually match anything on here, but just so you can kind of see how we use this in class. So on here, formatting, just a couple formatting things. Whenever you want to change like the text or the size, you're going to have this toolbar up here where you can, bold things, or if you want to center a line, you can do that. I think another trick also that I know a lot of my students had problem with is like highlighting all of their data, especially using Chromebooks. I think they had a big problem with that. But if you didn't know, you can click in this first gray box over here, or above the one and to the left of the A, and it will actually highlight the entire sheet. So just kind of doing, depending on what you're using, it's an easier way to do it, and it's easier for students to do it if they're on Chromebooks that way. So highlight your information, and then like I said, you can change your fonts, change the size of it, bold, italicize, any of that kind of stuff. You also can like merge cells this way. You may not want to do that though, because it can ruin your data just depending on what you're doing. That can happen. So here's your formatting bar up here, and just different things that you can do to change how the spreadsheet's going to look. So after that, oh, wrong one, sorry. Inserting a column in a row. So if you just click on one of your rows, then you can right click and you can insert either left or right here, and you can insert another column on here. You also can do this by clicking on insert at the top, and you have that option. And then same thing with columns. If you highlight, oh, I just said that wrong, sorry. Columns going up and down, rows. If you click on a row, then you can insert a row above or below. So those are just some basics on it. If you ever need to add more than one, instead of having to click it multiple times, if you were to highlight 3 rows or 3 of your columns, then you can actually insert 3 at the same time. So you don't have to do it one by one and it take a lot of time. It's just some time saving things. All right, check boxes. This was a fairly new thing. I think it came out like last summer or last spring maybe. But if I have a like list that I need to make sure that I've gone through and made sure every student like turned in a field trip form, what I can do is I can insert a row, and then if I select it and click where am I at now? I like wrote all this stuff down now. I'm click add column. Okay. Hold on, sorry. There we go. I'm sorry. Okay, so you're gonna highlight the ones that you want to put a checkbox next to, click insert, and then insert your checkboxes. And then once again, you can format them. If you want them to all be center aligned, you can just center align them. But it makes it really easy to go through and just click on the checkbox, and then you can know if your students turned in something or just keeping track of different things. All right. Okay, so another thing that you can do is, for instance, if you had students fill out a form and you had them put their first and last name together, but whenever you're sorting the data, you want it to sort by their last name and it's not able to pick it up that way, you can actually split their names so that it can have their first and last name in a different column. So I put my name down here at the bottom just as an example. So with this Ashley Jackson, if you click on that cell, then you can click on data and then split text. And then if you split it by the space in between it, it will automatically split first name and last name. So just a little easier way to get those into 2 separate columns if you didn't ask for them. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and delete these so they're out of the way. And then come up here and I'm actually going to delete this column. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about filtering and how you can create filters for your data. One thing that we always did in my PLC, my group, we would all share the same Google form for our students to take assessments similar to this one. And we would have all of our data on the same sheet so that we could look at how we did compared to each other and, what areas could we work on best with each other and, where's our area for improvement. So there's a way to create a filter so that you can look at just like one teacher's data and be able to see that. So you're going to click on data and then filter, create a filter. And then you are able to filter by these little arrows at the top. So for instance, if I want to filter it by just me, I can uncheck those other names, and then it's only going to show my scores that I had. So my students that were in here with their scores, sorry. And so from here, this filter can save, and then you are able to click on this as you need and be able to use that. So whenever you're doing this, you can change the name to whatever you want the filter to be. And then to X out of it, you just go back to data and then turn off filter. So then you can see everybody's again. But it's just a little way for you to only look at one set of data rather than all of it. Okay, so then lastly, talking about tabs down at the bottom. So you can actually have multiple like pages of your sheets down here so that all of your data can be in one place rather than having multiple spreadsheets for different things. So you can add one by just clicking the plus sign. And then if you double click on the name, you can change it to whatever you want to change it to. What I will do a lot, like for instance, all of the sign-in sheets I'm using for my webinars, they all connect to the same spreadsheet, and I just put down at the bottom what the webinar is for each person, or sorry, each sign-in. So then I can have it all in one location and I don't have to go look for it anywhere. You also can duplicate sheets. So say that I want to look at this data, but I want to manipulate it for just me. But I don't want everyone else to lose their data or for it to change. I can duplicate this tab and then all the data will also be on here and it's just like a copy of it. So just different things that you can do for that. Okay, so now, one thing I forgot was freezing a row. I think that's very important. The good thing is if you use a Google form that goes into a spreadsheet, it automatically will freeze the first row so that your information is here. But if you're ever on a spreadsheet and it's not automatically frozen, you can just click on view and then freeze, which is the first one, and you can freeze a certain number of rows. I think it only goes up to 3 rows. I could be wrong on that, but you can just select which one you want to freeze. And then while you're scrolling through your data, it'll keep that, that row up there so that you can see what the information was in that column. So that it's easier for you to analyze your data. Okay, so I think I got all those covered. Those are just kind of the basics of looking at using sheets and how you can look at data that way. All right, so let's get into the important stuff of how can you use this in your classroom to analyze data and how can students use this. So sorting your data is a really, really big thing because like I said, we would use the same spreadsheet for all of our data on one assessment. So on here, it's going to be mixed between all of our students just based on what time they took it. And, you know, if we had first period all taking it together, then our students would just pile in together. And when we're looking at data specifically for our students, then we need to be able to split it up. So I'm going to click over in this left box to highlight all of my data. And then I will click on data and then sort range. And it has a header. So now it knows that at the top there are labels. And right now I'm going to sort it first by teacher. So I'm going to have it in order by teacher. But then I can add another sort column and I'm going to do it by class period. So then it'll have all of my first period, all of my second period, all of my third period. And then I'm going to do it by their name. Normally I would do this by their last name so it matches my grade book. But since I don't have last names on this sheet, it's going to be by first name. So I'm going to sort it, and then it's going to magically do all of its lovely formulas and work, and it will organize it. So now you can see that all of Jackson is first, and then it goes into Miss Johnson's classes, and then it goes into Coach Wilson's classes. And then it will have all of our classes in order by period, and then names would then be alphabetized. So you can set it up however you would like. If you want it to be by score, you could organize it by score. You have all of those possibilities. So sorting your spreadsheets really helps with just keeping it specific to what you need to look at, and then you're able to take that information and be able to insert it into a grade book or however you like to look at that data. All right. So then the next thing is conditional formatting. And I think this is probably one of my favorite things about Google Sheets. And this is what I spend a lot of my time looking up because I want to know more tricks and different things you can do with it. So you can set up conditional formatting whenever you want on a Google Sheet. It can be as soon as you set it up, or it can be when there's already information inside of it. So I want to conditionally format to color by teacher's name. So I want to see where all of my students are going to be with a specific color, all of Johnson's and all of Wilson's. So I'm going to click on column C because that's the one I want to conditionally format. And then I click on format at the top and conditional formatting. So now on here, I get to set what I want the color to be, what I want the rule to be, and where the range is going to be. So I already selected column number C, or column C, not number. So that's why it says 1 through 170. And then I want it to be set as a text is exactly, and I'm going to say Jackson. I want it to be my name, and I'm going to set it for yellow. So then any box that has Jackson in it in this column is going to change to be yellow. So then I'm just going to add more rules to set it for Johnson and Wilson. So then on here, same range. I want to say text is exactly Johnson, and she will be purple. And then lastly, I will say text is exactly Wilson, and I want it to be stupid. Okay, so then on here, it automatically sets this. And what's really cool is if you set this up like before your sheet gets responses on it, then it will automatically set these colors in. And once again, when we're in class and we're seeing this live feed of it, you can automatically see where your students and what their scores were. So it makes it really, really simple. So another one we like to do is we like to set it up to alert us if a student made below a certain score. So I'm going to click now on where the score column is. I'm going to add another rule, and I'm going to say less than 5. And I'm going to turn it red so it's easy for us to see. And so then I know right when they're taking this assessment, if a student pops up and they have less than a 5, 4, whatever the number is I just put on there, sorry, then it's going to show red. And I would automatically pull that student, talk to them, maybe start going over some of the questions with them, kind of create my small groups based on this. So what I would do a lot of times is have a Google form set up for like a bell work. And then based on those questions, I could set up my small group that I needed to work with that day. And it was just really easy to have this conditional formatting already on here. So then I don't have to go through and, sort the numbers and look at all of them and make sure that, they're doing what they're doing. It will automatically populate it for me with the color, and bam, you're done. We would also do this with incorrect answers so that it would show us when they put wrong answers on here. But it's just setting it up the same way. Click on that column that you want to use, format, conditional formatting, and then you get to pick how the cells are going to be formatted. So it can be text is exactly. You can even do it by date or like time. So depending on when students like turn things in, greater than, less than, and then you can even make custom formulas. And I'm going to go over this in just a second, but I created a tardy log sheet using a custom formula. Do I have it memorized? No, I Googled all these things and found great YouTube videos, and that's what I'm about to go over. If you're really interested in really interested in learning how to do custom formulas, I'm going to give you a YouTube playlist that has a lot of good ones on it. Okay, so now I have it conditionally formatted for what I need, and I'm able, like I said, be able to see exactly who I need to pull, what I need to do, so that my students are being, or I'm able to teach my students the best way possible. It is Friday, guys. I'm ready for the weekend. Okay, so going back, here are all the directions for conditional formatting, and then here's a little GIF. So on here, I gave you this template of a tardy sheet, and if you click on the blue use template button, it will actually give you a copy, and you're able to use this in your class if you want to. Just edit it to what are your class periods that you have and such. So I'm going to open this up on mine so that I don't create a new template. Hold on one second. So what this will do is on this spreadsheet is the moment that a student gets their name put on here 3 times, it will highlight it red. So at Hudson, we had a tardy log that was anytime a student got 3 tardies in your specific class period, then you had to give them a after-school detention. So I thought having a paper one was really tedious, and I'm gonna be honest, I didn't use it that often. So if I had a digital one that I could just pull up anytime a student was tardy, type their name in, and it will automatically tell me when it's their 3rd time, it makes life a lot easier. So I went on to lovely Google and figured out, is there a way to highlight information once it's seen more than a certain number of time? And I was able to find that. So on here, this is an example just so you can see what it looks like. So if I take away Sam's name right here, his name will, well, it will take off the red. But if I type his name back, I type it the same way. Come on. There you go. Then once his name is on there that third time, it will turn red. So it alerts you that you need to write that detention, sadly. So I kind of set this up to match middle school and high school, just kind of depending on where you teach. And you can just delete a column if that's not your class period that you're in. And then down here at the bottom, here are all of the cycles, and they're already set up for you. So you just keep the cycles and then type their name. So I just type the date in the far left column, and then you can write their name. The one trick is you have to write their name the same way each time. Like if you do, you know, Ashley Jackson, and then on the next one you just do Ashley, it's not going to pick up that it's the exact same cell. So you need to make sure you're typing it the same way. But this is just a little way to track those tardies, and it was helpful for me when I was in the classroom. All right, so you can get a copy of that and use it if you're interested. All right, so now conditional formatting for lessons. This was one of my favorite things in the class because I did a ton of breakout rooms. So I did a lot of these for different breakouts, little clues, or just like checks throughout our class. So I gave you 3 examples again, and I'm going to open these up so you can kind of see how I use them. They are all science related because this is what I taught, but you can get an idea of different ways you could do this in your class. So for instance, this was a breakout room clue that they had to figure out. And so what students would do is they would use these little pictures once they load, since you can't, I wasn't able to type these chemical formulas in here with students not getting confused. So hold on one second. Technology always wants to go slow when you're presenting things, right? All right, so here was their chemical formula they were looking at, and they had to figure out how many atoms are within it. So if they counted up the atoms, for instance, on the second one, there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 6 on this one. So when they type in 6, it changed to a color. But if they typed in any other answer, it didn't change to a color. And this was one of those locks that was a color lock. So what they would do is have to figure out the colors in the order that they go in, and then be able to put that into the lock. So just different ways to use conditional formatting for sorry, I just lost my train of thought when I was looking at the chat, but just different ways to use that conditional formatting for students, and they think it's so fun. I mean, I did teach 8th graders, but I still think high school students would be like, well, why did this box just change colors? So this was actually a station activity that they were doing, and we were reviewing vocabulary for atoms. So what they had to do was tell me what the vocabulary word is that matched the definition. So on here, like has a positive charge, that's a proton. And so when they typed that word in there, again, going very slow now. So when they typed that word in, it would change to a specific color if they got it right. This also helped with spelling and practicing, different things like that. Always things we need our students doing. So that would all change colors on here. And then what they could do to double check to make sure they got them all right is put the color code in this last box. And if it turned green, then they knew that all their answers were correct. Now Ardell's texting me. All right, so last example I'm going to show you is, once again, just doing answer checks for students. Sorry that most of my examples are chemistry, but I think this was the easy one to use throughout the year in 8th grade. So on here, we were talking about stable and unstable elements, and they have to be able to count the number of valence electrons that these elements have. So based on the number that they put in on valence electrons down here, it would give them hints by changing different colors. And then because of that, it could then pull up different questions. So for instance, like, is this a full outer shell? Maybe if this will work. There we go. So it would ask them if the shell, is it a full outer shell? Because that's how you know if it's stable or unstable. So just kind of different guiding things that would help them be able to answer these questions when they're just starting to learn material. And I think the biggest thing for me is that I did this a lot because it gave students the pride of figuring out the answer on their own rather than always having to come ask me questions. They could, type their answer in, and if they saw that it wasn't changing the correct color, they would start thinking on their own rather than just being, Miss, I don't get it. It was one of those things that I felt like gave them some practice and independence on taking control of their work and not having someone else or me do it for them. So it was a really cool thing. So same thing down here, just set it up to match the word. So a proton charge is positive. And whenever they would type that in, if it turned green, they knew they got the correct answer. And if it wasn't green, then they had to keep working to get it correct. So just little answer checks for them. It was, like I said, they think it's really fun and really cool, so we like it. All right, so those are some examples. You can use those in your classroom or change them for your subject area, but those are all templates that you can have. So then formulas. I am obviously lucky being in a science classroom. Formulas are something that we use a lot because of the math that we do also. But this was just different ways to get students practicing them. And I think the biggest thing is I didn't know that Excel, or if we used Google Sheets when I was in college, that it did math for you. And I think that's something that, even though, yes, we need students to understand calculations, if they're understanding formulas, that's one step closer to them understanding the math part of it. So I think if I learned this tool when I was in middle school or high school, I would have been way more successful with math classes because I could see that there are tools out there to help us. And we're still having to learn the background information on the formulas to understand how the math is working. So these are some different ones that we did in my class. And this is actually when I taught 7th grade. So 7th grade students were doing this. I promise it's capable. It's just one of those things that you walk through the steps with them. And with these different tables, so I had already set up these tables for them. The information was blank on here. So this is actually a student's copy, and this is some information they put in here. And then they were able to take this data and make a graph with it. And this is what we were practicing in class. So one thing that a lot of students got held up on was getting out the calculator and doing the math and making sure their generations were, all correct when it came to their population sizes. And I saw that, that took them a lot longer to figure out math. And I was like, okay, well, the spreadsheet will actually do it for us. So let me show you how to do that. So I would show them how you could just type the equal sign on here, and then you can start putting different formulas in here that you need to happen. So for instance, in this column, we just need the sum of two numbers. So we need the sum of the box or the cell that is the number of offspring added for the, they were newspaper mice, so one color of mice. And then we just add the plus sign and click on the cell next to it that we need to add together. And then it will give us, once it wants to load, it will give us our sum so that we don't have to worry about doing this formula every single time. Okay, and like I said, it was just one of those time savers I found in class, and I thought that if I had this information when I was younger, it would have helped me so much more, especially once you get to those college level math courses, especially statistics. I think I would have been a lot more successful at it. So the cool thing is once you do the formula once, you don't have to type it in each of these cells. You can actually click on this blue box right below it and drag it, and then it will take the information from the cell next to it and then do the math for you. So just little spreadsheet tricks to show students to help them. So then once again in this column, we were just looking at the starting population, and students knew their starting population was 10 every single time. So all they had to do was take 10 plus the number that was in this column. So we talked about the formula again. We're looking at sum 10 plus this box. Then I just close my bracket, hit enter, and it does the math for me. So then I can drag it and it will do all of that math, and they would know exactly how many in their ecosystem or their like I said, they were still applying the math by learning the formula behind it. So I thought it was really useful for them. So then what they did is they took this information and turned it into a graph. So to do that, all they would do is highlight the specific information that they were looking at. So they had to make a table for, a graph for this table and a separate graph for here. So they would just highlight this table and then insert, and they're going to insert a chart. And then from here, we went through how to set up our chart, make sure that it was, we were looking at a bar chart, but just set it up in all different ways and be able to, we even learned how to switch the X and Y axis. We had a lot of practice with this to be able to understand why it formulates the way it does, and practice how X and Y axes relate to each other. So it was just a big discussion on how we did this. And I know some people may look at this and say, this is terrifying to try to teach kids how to do this on here. But like I said, I was doing this with 7th graders, and I know we have a 6th grade teacher also at Hudson who does a ton of graphing stuff on here. Yes, ton of graphing stuff on sheets. And students actually like it because it saves them time. So once you teach it how to do it the first time, after that, it gets a lot easier. And what I would always do is I had just directions typed out on another tab down here so that students could always refer to them if they get lost or, get behind. And I think now, because I did this a few years ago, I think now I could even add voice instructions to it to help with other students. I could even, have a video attached to this assignment on Google Classroom if I needed to, just to go over it, and students can be a little more independent with it. So here is one example of some formulas that students would use. And okay, so another one is that our students were required to input their grades every Monday, and they would have to just be able to calculate, sorry, losing my train of thought again, calculate their grades and what their goals would be. So how much better do they need to do in this class? Do they need to be going to tutorials? It would also look at their MAP scores and important information just to be able to keep up and be independent when it came to what you should be doing to take care of your grades. So we would do this during our homeroom time on Mondays, and this is just a copy of one that you can use. And so during this, we would talk about how to get our grade to our goal and just do average formulas and things that were very basic, like the sum ones. And like I said, formulas, if you're really, really interested in them, here is a YouTube playlist that has a lot of the formulas that I like to use on here. It's just, once I use them once, it's one of those things that I may not use it again. It just kind of depends on what the formula is. The most basic and ones that we use the most are the sum and average. That was a really easy one for students to understand. One that I love is called proper. So what it will do is it will, hold on one second. Oh, come on. If you type in equals and then proper, what it does is it'll capitalize the information to make it like the proper noun that it should be. So I know I get really mad when students don't capitalize their names. Not mad, but I just like things to look the same and look good. So I could always use this formula to just make sure that their names were capitalized and little things like that. So you just kind of learn different ones as you play around with it. And like I said, I YouTube a ton of it. So I have this little playlist here of just ones that I really, really like. And I linked it for you here in case you're really interested in using formulas. Because I don't memorize them. I look them up because there are people that know everything about formulas and it's great. So I use their brain. Okay, so lastly, another thing that I like to use sheets for is having students do assignments that would be within a table. I know one thing, kind of like I said before, I'm really particular about formatting and I just want things to look nice. And I found that if I was making a table on a Google Doc and students were typing in it and then their answer was too long and it kicked it to another sheet and then just didn't look the way I wanted it to. So you can use sheets to make these different assignments. And then the tables look pretty every single time. So it's just a different way to do this and have students, let me open the real version of this, have students work within a spreadsheet to have them practice, because I think that's the biggest thing is practicing within sheets so they're not scared of it like a lot of us are. So on here, what I did is I just had the vocabulary words, the definition, and what students had to do is create a trick to remember the word, and then they were going to insert an image into each cell. So they're just making their own little vocabulary list right here. The cool thing about putting it into a spreadsheet is that a lot of like gaming sites, so like Quizzes or Gimkit, can then take the spreadsheet and create a game with it. So you're kind of making it easier on students because then they can just import this into different sites and be able to make their own vocabulary words or vocabulary cards and games. So this was a way that I really like to use sheets with students so that they could practice, once again, sorry, using these sheets on here. So here was one example. And then I would use this for like reviews a lot. Like I said, I just liked it for the table aspect of it, and I thought it made things look nice, and I just felt like they set up a lot better on here than they would on a Google Doc. So they could type their response here, and if I had any feedback, I could type the feedback in the next column, and then they could make corrections on here. And this was one thing that I did a lot when I had like small group time and stuff, and I could talk to those students individually and give them feedback and you know, be able to help them to be the best they can with these specific topics, and you know, make sure that they got all the information they needed on here. One thing that I had to teach my students is how to make sure that your text wraps on here so it doesn't just go on to the next box and then you lose the information. So there's really two ways to do this, but the first one is on your format bar right here, text wrapping, and I want it to wrap around so that it all fits in one box and you can see it all. You also can do this under formatting and then text wrapping down here. And so you have that option, but that just makes sure that all your text shows. And so I would make sure students knew that also in case their text somehow went under the other cell, because then they were confused as to what happened. All right, so last thing I want to go over is a website called flippity.net. And I think this is my favorite tool to use with students because they get to be creative and turn spreadsheets into different live activities. So for instance, this is an example of students, they had this game and they had to match the period numbers with the element that would be in that period. So when you match these two things, then it would go away and you know that you got your answer correct. So it's a really fun game, but they did this all and set it all up on a spreadsheet. So let me show you what this looks like, because this is like a game changer for students. So when you go to that website, Flippity has all of these different things that you can do, like create flashcards, you can create games. They even have scavenger hunts on here, kind of like breakout rooms. And they have new ones all the time. They have timelines, which I know is something I just talked to some history teachers at our school about, is creating timelines that look nice and presentable, and you can put more information within them. I mean, they have tons. Here's the matching game, or you can turn it into memory. For students, they have brackets. So if you ever do like a book competition with your library, here's a way to turn it digital for students. There's just tons of options. I love it. So the cool thing about this website is that they give you an example, instructions, and then they give you the template. So you don't have to go do this yourself. It's all here for you. So for instance, I'm just going to do the flashcard ones. So I'm going to go to the demo first, and I'm going to see what it looks like. So on here, it has the vocabulary word, and then I can just flip it around and it will tell me the information that I need to know. The cards can be different colors. You set it up how you want it. I mean, it is so cool for these students to do this, and then you can change it into list. Look, you can even have videos on here. It's amazing. It is so cool. So that's the demo of it. And then you can click on the instructions. So now it's going to tell you exactly how to set this up. And then lots of frequently asked questions are on here. So people have, used this for a while, and they can actually give you guidance on how to set it up to make it look the best it can. If you can insert those videos, different things. And then here's the template. So what you would do is just make a copy of it, and then it's all set up ready for you to go, and you can insert your own vocabulary words and pictures or definitions or videos and set up your cards how you want them to look. Come on. And since this is all through Google Sheets, it's a really good tool for even younger students to use, because they don't have to worry about signing into like Quizlet and creating their own account on there. Because I know I think they have to be 13 to even make their own account. This one, all through Google Sheets. So safe to use. We know that they're not gathering information. It's great. So on here, like I said, you're able to insert all of your information. You would just delete all of their stuff and insert your own. Here's where you can say what color you want the card to be, and you can even change the text color if you want it. So then on this other tab down here at the bottom, this is going to be your link to get to your flashcards. Okay, so before you can click on this link, because if I clicked on it right now, it's not going to show anything. What I have to do is I have to go to File and Publish to the web. And then once I publish this to the web, it's turning it into like a live website that has your vocabulary flashcards on it. So you would just click Publish, and then here is your link. And right here, you can just click on this, and it will open up, and then here are your flashcards that you just created. I know this is the same example as on the template, but it's really, really simple. And like I said, my students loved to do this because they could create games of whatever they needed to out of the options on Flippity. I think it just has a ton of resources, and they add new ones like this randomizer. This is a new one that I haven't even seen before, or Easter egg scavenger hunts. Just so many different things on here for students to be creative with. So I love it. It's great. All right. So that is it. Going over all the ways that I like to use spreadsheets in my class. What I did on here is link a couple things that I think are really useful. So Ben Collins has a great website about spreadsheets. He's usually the first person I go to, or first place I go to when I have questions about formulas or how to do something. His websites are awesome. So I linked that here for you. Alice Keeler created a student practice sheet. I'm going to show you what this looks like real quick. That I would not use the entire thing just because I didn't have time for my students to do the entire thing, but for them to get used to using Google Sheets, this was a way I would start out with it. And she has all these different steps down here of students practicing on sheets to learn how to do different things like organizing and writing formulas, and learning what cells are and how to go to different cells, practicing with naming them. It's just kind of the fundamentals of spreadsheets. So even I went through this entire thing, and I thought it was awesome when I practiced it. So then, like I said, I used a couple of these tabs down here with my students in the past to get them used to it and ready for when we were going to use spreadsheets in class. Google has cheat sheets on Google Sheets. That's a tongue twister, but this is the link directly to it, and they have tons of help on there. And then lastly, if you wanted to get some more ideas on how to use Google Sheets in your class, Matt Miller with Ditch That Textbook has a ton of blog posts, but here's one that I really like on using Google Sheets in your class for different reasons than just a regular old spreadsheet. So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to stick around if you have any questions. Jennifer and I will be here and be in the chat. We'll be in the chat to help out with anything. Oh, thank you, Tracy. Thank you. Thank you. And this is recorded. I know I went over some things really, really fast. So I'll make sure to get the recordings out so y'all have it if you want to go over any of this stuff again. But, use these templates for your classes. And, the students actually love it, even though you may think spreadsheets are crazy. Thank you. Thank you. All right, I'm going to stop recording.